are often some misconceptions about how firelocks work, and firelocks are actually pretty simple to explain, but in the heat of a moment of fighting or combat or something, they can be very annoying or confusing, and very much oftentimes when I see nukies die or people running away from nukies die, it's because of firelocks. Firelocks are simple. They will close when they detect there is an atmospheric problem on the other side of, well, wherever they're detecting. So if there's an atmospheric problem where I'm standing, they'll close. If there's a problem over here, they'll close. Atmospheric problems can either be temperature problems or lack of pressure in a room. High pressure also will trigger firelocks. You can always shift click a firelock to see why it exactly is closed. The most common type, though, is going to be due to spacing. Say that room over there gets spaced. The firelocks will close immediately before any gas can really be taken out of this room. As you can see, the pressure of this tiny room was completely unaffected because of how fast they can close. They will close regardless if they have power or not, so firelocks are basically going to work no matter what. So for example, if you shift click and you see these blue lights, it'll say the extreme pressure differential warning is active. If you have engineering access, you can actually just walk up to it and press E and it will open the door immediately. This will actually leak out a little bit of the air in the room and could be a problem. So people with engineering access can technically open these instantly. If I don't have engineering access, left clicking these does absolutely nothing. You can't even hand pry them because they are still powered. However, if you have a prying tool, such as a crowbar, anyone can pull these open. I've also seen a misconception that if you're on the side of the spacing, you don't need any form of access to open it. Well, I don't have my engineering ID, and I still have to crowbar it open. However, there is a case here where if the entire room gets spaced entirely, as in every tile that these firelocks have access to, the lights will turn off because there's no longer a pressure difference because there's no pressure anywhere anymore. These rooms are entirely spaced. So regardless of your access, you can just press E on them or left click them to lower them. However, though, if you have engineering access, you actually can just left click or press E on them to close them again. Say you can patch a hole here and you want to start getting pressure back into a certain section. So, I mean, I could do that right now if I just do fixed grid atmos, which is pretend I fixed the atmospherics. Since I raise these up by hand, it could save a little bit of pressure. Just to fully show this, I'll let it space out again, and I'll even let them all lower, so everything's getting spaced. I'm keeping the door open. Have to keep standing here just for a little bit. The pressure difference light actually can go off before that the entire room is spaced, as you just saw there. But there we go. Now it's completely spaced, so they won't reopen on me. And let's just say that I didn't pry them back open, fixed a grid atmos. The doors will automatically close again, so you don't really have to be super micromanagey with that if you're an engineer trying to fix it. So, as mentioned, if both sides are spaced and you don't even have to keep the door open, anyone with or without access will be able to just walk up to these doors and open them. Of course, this is with power. If the doors have actual power going to them, you can open them. If the doors are unpowered, if the firelocks are unpowered, no one could just press E to open them. You will have to use a crowbar regardless. So that's really it. They just check for pressure difference on one side. That will lock them. If there's no pressure difference on all sides that they can detect, then it basically like removes the engineering lock from it. It will still say you need an engineering access to be able to get certain functions, but that's just not true. I'll re-show that one more time. So yeah, still says engineering access may be required to use certain functions, but as long as you don't see the lights on, which I guess you could just kind of refer to them as engineering locks, you can run through it. So if you're a nukie without engineering access, you can do that. And just one more time, if there is no issue with firelocks, anyone can close them or pry them open without a crowbar just by clicking on them. If the lights are not on, they're basically all access, regardless of the actual threat. There could still be a threat. It's just look for the lights really and shift click as much as you can. Now, if you're trying to deconstruct these firelocks, two things you can do if you're trying to just spread out spacing more and you're not exactly trying to fix problems, say you're like a syndicate. If you just jam a locker in a firelock and say you space something, well, that Firelock chain will basically act like it doesn't exist because they cannot close on the lockers. And then, of course, once you do this long enough, now this entire row of Firelocks is messed up. If you're trying to spread spacing throughout the station, you could just keep moving forward. Of course, like as mentioned, you have to be careful with the lights, so don't be too eager to rush through. Actually, having a gas analyzer is really important for this because you have to wait for the pressure to go down to literally nothing for the Firelocks to give up. And then you could just keep moving on like so. Also, deconstructing Firelocks doesn't actually require you to have to deconstruct the whole thing. So to really do this, you will need some basic tools. So to deconstruct a Firelock, you need a wrench. Then you will need a crowbar. That will pop out the glass. So glass airlocks are a little different in this regard. You can always just follow the steps, but glass airlocks take longer. Well, you screwdriver it open, then you'll crowbar it again. So it's just a little bit of an extra step. And then finally, you'll use a wire cutter on it. This will rip out the cable on the door. You do need welding protection and a welder. And at this point, that will fully break a Firelock. So if you want to completely deconstruct it, you can do that. You could do this faster than getting rid of the entire Firelock. So in a glass Firelock, of course, you have to do the wrench and the crowbar to get the glass out. Then this will give this panel look here. If you were to actually use a wrench on it right now, you would turn it into a normal Firelock, which is pretty interesting, but it is just labeled as a frame right now. But if you use a screwdriver on it to pull open this panel and then wrench it, you will completely unanchor it. So as long as you see that like little pixel open up, you could just take apart a Firelock just like so. So if I were to place down a normal Firelock, which these ones are a little bit more common. There's also the thin Firelock. I'll just show all of them because why not, to be thorough. Getting rid of a thin Firelock's a little interesting. It actually has to be closed first and then you weld it. So these ones are actually, like, I guess you could say a little bit more annoying to get rid of because of that. It could require more work. And then you just use a wrench on it. That will turn it into a full-size Firelock. And then, as mentioned earlier, you have to get that little pixel open, and then you can unwrench it. So that's what you do for thin Firelocks. For normal Firelocks, if you're not turning into a glass Firelock, you have to also crowbar it closed. It's a little different per one, but really you can just kind of follow the same steps. For this, you also have to weld it, and then you just wrench it. And this will also put it back into like an assembly state. Open that little pixel panel, and then you're good to go. If you were to not do it, as mentioned, if you were to wrench it without opening that little panel, you basically just put it back to normal. So make sure you see that little pixel open. Destroying Firelocks by hand takes much, much longer than just unwrenching them. However, if you don't fully destroy them, it's easier to fix them. Firelocks can't just be made by hand. Of course, engineers can just RCD Firelocks, but if anyone else is trying to do that or they don't have the RCD ammo, they have to get electronics for it. So replacing these isn't that easy. Destroying Firelocks used to be more like viable beforehand. Like if you were to destroy Firelocks across a station, you'd make the station really unsafe. But RCDs make it so replacing Firelocks isn't all that difficult. But destroying Firelocks isn't hard either. Really, the most important part of this video it's arguably just for nukies, because the nukies are the ones that need to move fast all the time. Don't get caught on Firelocks. Try to keep them jammed open and always have a path that's clear of Firelocks. You really don't want to be shut out of something that requires you to have to take your hand off your weapon, get a crowbar it open, then you're stuck still for 2 seconds. When this game's time to kill is around 1 second for some of the best weapons in the game, you don't have 2 seconds to afford opening a door. You will die if somebody's in a position to shoot at you while you're waiting for that. Or steal engineering access and then not worry about it, but that's a whole different problem. Also, that means like engineer in tags that space things have a much easier time doing so because they have the access. Anyways, I've droned on long enough. I hope this clears up some confusion regarding Firelocks. This is always a topic where people aren't aware of the pressure differences or the engineering access or the fact that they become all access at a certain point, or even the fact that they will stop even trying to close if there's no pressure difference at all. Anyways, thank you for watching.